Hello, my name is Father James Kelleher, and I'm a priest in the Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity. And I'm the founder and director of Eucharistic Family Rosary Crusade. And I do Rosary Crusades all over the United States, England, Ireland, and Central America. Today I'd like to talk to you about Jesus and the Eucharist and the real presence. And I'd like to pose a question. Do you really believe that Jesus has the power to transform the bread and wine into his body and blood? Now, what I'm going to share with you is based on an article called Jesus, Moses, and the Eucharist, written by Matthew Pettish. Our focus is going to be on John chapter 6, the Bread of Life Discourse. It's one of the most beautiful and most powerful chapters in the four Gospels. How is it set up, and what's going on there? Well, in the first part of John chapter 6, Jesus actually works two miracles. The first miracle is he multiplies the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes and feeds 5,000 people. That's a miracle. The second miracle is he separates from his apostles, and the apostles begin to travel in a boat across the water from one side of the lake to another. And in that situation, Jesus appears to them. The apostles are afraid, and he says, "It is I, be not afraid." They ask him to get into the boat, but immediately the boat finds itself at the other side. That's the second miracle. In both of these miracles, Jesus manifests his power over creation. And the way this relates to Moses is, in the Old Testament, when Moses was leading the Israelites for 40 years towards the Promised Land, Moses begged God to feed these people. So that bread came from heaven. But Moses wasn't the one who created the bread. God did. And so Moses gives this gift of bread from God to his people. Jesus, in this miracle, he actually he multiplies the bread and does a miracle himself so that the people can be fed. When you look at the walking on the water, that's a comparison to Moses when he came to the Red Sea, and God told Moses, part the waters with your hands. And so Moses obeyed, and the water parted, and they walked through to the other side. Well, Jesus, he actually walks on the water, which is a greater feat, and demonstrates his mastery over all of creation. And these two miracles help you and me to understand that Jesus has the power to do what he says. After Jesus had walked on the water and appeared to his disciples, and their boat had immediately found itself on the other side of the lake, the Jews who had been fed by the 5 loaves and 2 fishes, they came searching for Jesus, and they found him. And they said to Jesus, "Give us a sign that we might believe." And for instance, a sign like Moses, who gave the Israelites the bread from heaven that was able to sustain them. And Jesus pointed out to the Jews that Moses wasn't the one who created this bread. This was bread given to them by heaven. Jesus responded to the Jews, "I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger. He who believes in me shall never thirst." And then Jesus goes on to explain that he is the bread from heaven. He is the one who gives us eternal life, and that it is the Father's will that no one should be lost. But unfortunately, the Jews do not believe. Jesus goes further with the Jews and says, "I am the bread of life come down from heaven. And this bread of life is my flesh for the life of the world." And the Jews say, "How can he give us his flesh to eat?" This is overwhelming for them. And at the thought of eating his flesh, many lose interest in following Jesus, and many walk away from him. And so Jesus then looks to his apostles and says, "Will you too walk away?" Peter affirms that even though he might not totally understand how Jesus can make himself present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, in the Most Holy Eucharist, Peter believes. And you and I, we may not be able to, we can't fully understand how Jesus does this, how he gives the priest the power to consecrate the bread and wine so that it becomes truly his body blood, soul, and divinity. We may not fully understand this mystery, but we believe. And every time we receive, we ask Jesus to deepen our belief. It is the real power of Jesus in the Eucharist. It is his body, his blood, his soul, and divinity that transforms us. And the Church says that the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. So every grace comes to us from Jesus in the Eucharist. And when we receive him in the Eucharist, he makes us like himself. He gives us power to do what ordinary human beings could not do. He gives us the power to love sacrificially, to lay down our lives for others. He gives us the power to follow him wherever he may ask us to go. If we look at some of the great saints who have been martyrs, they had the power to go and follow Jesus to the point of shedding their blood because they were filled with the real presence of Jesus received in the Most Holy Eucharist. Ave Maria.